Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Here I am, so happy to speak with all of you about attachment styles. This is something that is just such a helpful way to understand what happens, especially when you find yourself in repeated patterns where you don't feel connected with your partner in the way that you want to. All right, so talking about attachment styles, there are 4 different attachment styles. Sometimes people break it up into 5 and different ways of doing it, but the main thing is 5 attachment styles. This is actually work that comes from the 1950s, and it's still relevant. It's still helpful. And there are 4 different kinds of attachment styles. The one that, of course, we all aspire to is secure attachment, where you have a good ability to connect emotionally and otherwise in your relationship, where you are comfortable asking for help, being dependent but not overly dependent, and you can form relationships and be gratified. That is secure attachment. I'll say more about it in a moment. And then there are 3 forms of insecure attachment, namely anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and disorganized attachment. And so I'm presenting this a little bit in an instructional manner, but I really want to get into the details so that you can recognize yourself where relevant. About half the population has secure attachment and half the population doesn't. And so let's talk about first the part that does. So for the 56% of people who have secure attachment, really, I guess I'll step back further and say that when we're talking about attachment styles, we're really talking about patterns of behavior in relationships. How comfortable are you opening up emotionally? How comfortable are you being present with your partner's emotions? How comfortable are you with intimacy and vulnerability, with depending on someone to help you? How uncomfortable are you with that? And the main idea in thinking about attachment styles is that your attachment style as an adult with another adult that you're in relationship with, in an intimate romantic partnership or marriage, that the patterns you have with your adult partner when you're an adult mirror and reflect the dynamics that you had as a child with your adult caregiver. So if your adult caregiver really didn't respond to your needs, well, one way of responding to that is to just be uncomfortable with closeness and with having your needs responded to, noticed, observed, having your presence and attention desired is super uncomfortable if your caregiver didn't give you that much attention. And what I'm describing now is the avoidant attachment style, where someone with avoidant attachment style has a fear of intimacy, is just not comfortable being too close, or trusting others, or trusting that someone else is going to be able to meet their needs. One of the hallmark signs for someone with avoidant attachment style is that they don't believe that being in a relationship, someone else is going to be able to meet their needs anyway. That's mirroring what their experience was, what the imprint was from their caregivers in childhood. And often such a person is emotionally unavailable. So someone who has avoidant attachment style is just less likely to lean in, to be responsive, to notice the other person when there's something emotionally uncomplicated. When someone with an avoidant attachment style gets stressed, they are going to be avoidant. They're going to go in a cave. They're going to take some space. They're going to just kind of ignore things and not respond, not sure what to say. They just put their attention on other things. In contrast, someone whose caregiver gave them attention, but inconsistently, they are more likely to have an anxious attachment style. And someone with an anxious attachment style in the most expressed form is going to be clingy, needing validation because they have a deep fear of abandonment, that their partner is not going to be there for them. And so they're kind of hungry for validation and always can be concerned, for example, if a partner doesn't text them back right away, then they're like, oh, maybe he doesn't love me anymore. Maybe she doesn't care about me anymore. The anxious attachment person, if you're not like that or you don't really connect with it, it can seem unduly dramatic, but it's actually a very genuine, can go all the way to kind of like a terror that they're going to be abandoned with no notice. And so someone with anxious attachment just wants validation, wants acknowledgement. And the third insecure attachment style is disorganized. It's also called fearful avoidant. And it's really a blend of traits of both the anxious attachment style and the avoidant attachment style. But they can be conflicting tendencies, I'll just say. Someone with disorganized attachment, they can really crave affection. That's the anxious attachment style part of them speaking, and also really want to avoid affection. That's the avoidant attachment style speaking. They can be very, very hesitant to actually develop and participate in a romantic relationship, and yet the yearning to feel loved and cared for is very, very strong. So the disorganized attachment style is actually the least common, and it's also the most challenging to navigate because it's like push pull. I want you so close, but if you're close, I'm gonna really feel uncomfortable. Whereas the avoidant attachment, it's in a way more consistent, more clean, more clear. If there is trouble, they're more likely to avoid it and to just go off on their own and come back when they're feeling better and have no interest in actually unpacking the thing, because that's going to be too confronting, too uncomfortable to have that much emotional closeness. Whereas someone with anxious attachment is going to be much more likely to want to process things and get validation and get confirmation and talk through something multiple times because they're just hungry to truly feel loved and need that from the other person. And I want to really say that people can be extraordinarily high functioning and really very successful, good at sales, which involves a lot of relating to people, or a healthcare profession, or teacher. Like, people can interact with other human beings all day and be very successful at it. And it's just in their romantic relationship, in the adult form of intimacy that is comparable to the kind of relationship a child has with a caregiver, that these attachment styles can present themselves. And the other thing I want to say is that for someone who basically is high functioning and managing quite well in their life, these tendencies can be relatively dormant, I'll say, until there's stress. And when there's stress, either in the relationship or in your life in general, then these kinds of behaviors and ways of interacting and the sense of unmet needs will flare up, even if nothing in particular has happened in the relationship. It's like if someone with anxious attachment style has a hard day at work, when they come home, that attachment style need may be more present. Their craving for validation and attention from their partner is going to be more pronounced because of the overall stress that they have. And when things are going well, and the exact same interaction happens when this person comes home at the end of the day, they might not need as much from their partner because in being more relaxed, the attachment style is just less expressed because that truly is a response to stress. Now, when it comes to secure attachment, which in principle we all aspire to, or we want to aspire to, that really includes the ability to both trust someone else and feel comfortable being trusted and counted on, to love and be loved, to be able to be close and more intimate with ease. I mean, vulnerability can always be a little bit complicated, but there's just more ease in opening up, in leaning in being seen, in being present to what someone else is going through. Because someone with a secure attachment is not actually fundamentally afraid of intimacy. And they're not panicked when a partner leans in, nor are they panicked when a partner leans out and needs space. They are available without being needy, depending on someone else without being dependent. Now, if you know me already, then you already know that I do not consider any of this a permanent sentence. Never mind a fixed mindset where you think that people are the way they are. Instead, I take and warmly invite you to take a growth mindset. Perhaps you already do, since you're here learning about this. And the key is to see your own patterns, see your partner's patterns, and deepen your compassion and insight on the dynamic between the two of you. If you have anxious attachment, or that's what you tend towards, and your partner is not responding to a text right away, for example, instead of immediately going to feeling abandoned or getting angry so that when they do respond an hour later, you're not already pissed and then it becomes complicated. You can just appreciate that they responded then. Understanding the different attachment styles can be very helpful when you take a breath and can be objective and talk yourself through what is actually happening. Because when you're craving validation and attention, your partner can give it to you, but it doesn't really address that hunger and validation. That is something that you need to do for yourself. I'm not going to get into all of the ways of doing that. I really just wanted to outline these different attachment styles so you can see yourself and also say, I haven't actually seen data on this, but in my experience, avoidant and anxious attachment styles often end up in relationship with one another. This is definitely true for my husband and I, who I would say we both have secure attachment styles, but when there's stress, when there's intensity, my underlying default is definitely to anxious attachment and his is definitely to avoidant attachment. So years ago, when we would have an argument, I would want to talk it through and process and understand his opinion and share mine and be heard and revisit it again a few more times. And he would want to just go meditate, journal, take a walk in nature, do whatever, work it through himself and put it behind him and then come back and continue on in a way that to me felt like it was as though nothing had happened, but that wasn't true. He moved through it in his way, and I was craving the connection, craving the feeling of being seen. And I think there is a way that if we have a tendency towards anxious attachment, that we can more simply ask our partner for what we need while really understanding that kind of desperation, like if he doesn't text me, that I immediately wonder what's going on, that is something for me to go inside, look at myself, journal, remind myself that I'm safe, really befriend myself most of all, rather than delegating that job to my partner. Fundamentally, in talking about this topic, I'm really making an invitation to take personal responsibility, because the more that you orient to what you need for your own well-being and provide it for yourself, the more genuine connection and intimacy is available, no matter what your attachment style is. And when, for example, as someone with a tendency towards anxious attachment, you manage your own internal world, and you're not clingy and needy, yearning for validation, but that you can essentially give that to yourself and come with more presence and openness to your partner. That is going to make it so much more safe and accessible for someone with avoidant attachment style to be present and to become vulnerable. But the more that you pull on the person with avoidant attachment style, just like wanting their soul to give you what you want, the less safe it is, the more their avoidant tendencies are going to be activated. And if you are someone with avoidant attachment style, the most important thing is to breathe and be present and not ignore your own experience. When you honor your own experience, even if you don't give verbal, don't express it verbally, but you're just tuned into yourself, then a partner with a tendency towards anxious attachment style will just be less overwhelming, because they're not filling you with their own needs if you make sure to prioritize staying connected with what your own experience is. In fact, when my husband and I, it was before we were married, but we were in the Adirondack Mountains in northern New York State, and we went to this lovely little yard sale on the side of the road. It didn't look that special, but when we went, there were such beautiful, beautiful things. And my husband was, well, as I say, he wasn't my husband then, but anyway, we weren't even engaged, but he was moving into a different apartment where for the first time he was going to be living alone. And so he didn't have anything for his kitchen. And we found these really lovely plates. They were 4 fine china plates that were just so pretty. And so we got them. I think they were $1 each. And so they were beautiful. The price was definitely right. And I was just so enthusiastic and in love with them. And so we got in the car with the 4 plates, and we're driving down this mountain road. And I just was so enthusiastic, and in a way that I'm sharing as a tendency for anxious attachment. Being enthusiastic can certainly be secure attachment, but I was sharing it and I wanted him to join me in it. And so I said, I just love them. Don't you love those plates? And he was like, like he didn't really answer. So I said it again, and I got louder, because his lack of joining me in my feeling was activating my anxious attachment style tendency. And then I think it was like the 4th time that I was like, I said it in different ways each time, but like, they're so beautiful. Don't you really love these? And he just looked at me and said, I don't know how I feel about them. I can't even feel how I feel about them because you're so loud. And sure, my volume was loud, but it really wasn't about like the how many decibels. It had to do with my emotional volume was loud, and he needed quiet in order to know what his emotional response was. And it was devastating to me when he said that, because it's like, I want to be expressed and I want you to join me and I want you to validate and make it clear that you love me. And here, join me in this wonderful world that I'm offering you. It did not feel like a wonderful world to him at all. He needed calm, he needed slow. Now, he has a black belt in karate. He's a Harvard graduate. He doesn't move through the world slowly, and he didn't then either. But when it comes to emotional intimacy and a kind of tender connecting, then he needed space and slowness in a way that it took a lot of growth for me to be able to offer. But once I did, he has learned to speed up and to know himself so much more fully. If this has spoken to you, I really, really want to invite you to join me in the Aligned in Hot Marriage program, either the independent study version, Aligned in Hot Marriage, or the Aligned in Hot Marriage with live coaching. Because while I don't really discuss attachment styles, I do teach you everything that you know, that you need to know to learn how to be comfortable with emotional intimacy, how to be successful with emotional intimacy in the ways that really override attachment style considerations and allow you both to feel closer and more connected. It is such a beautiful program. So again, if this spoke to you, please email me and I'll be very happy to share the link for the Aligned in Hot Marriage program and or the Aligned in Hot Marriage Live program. They are both magnificent ways to take what I'm sharing today, but learn your own path to secure attachment, to ease with intimacy, to a lot more happiness and joy together.